What is the shape of a single day? A perfect one is shaped like a teardrop, I think. Sometimes it folds in on itself, like a morning's dream revisited. That strangely instant sensation when one's head hits the pillow at night. What is that? Are there maps upon maps in there? If only one knew how to chart it. Perhaps then one could find the fountain of youth. There were numerous shops and weekly farmers' markets where we stayed off Rittenhouse Square. There was also a rather good French restaurant when we were feeling so inclined. Netto only joined me the one time and drank his coffee in perfunctory fashion, staring mostly aside as if he was an extra in the background of a movie set. Once he finished it, he exuded enough nervousness that I paid the check for my half-finished meal and left with him. I wasn't the one who gave us allowance to go freely outside, not that anyone was in charge. But Netto spent his days mostly in his room. A collector of mine had secured us a rather luxurious and spacious two-story walk-up, which I'd partially chosen because of its large, sunlit artist's atelier on the middle floor. Netto thanked me for the consideration, and despite my insistence to buy him all the tools he needed, he hadn't been in any artistic mood. He made his quarters upstairs a small corner office with only a small slit of a window and barely room to stretch out. He found a folding cot and a closet to put in there. We kept a lavish bedroom only down the hall ready for him should he change his mind, a pity, but I occupied the downstairs bedroom, which was efficiently right next to the kitchen like I like it. There was also a nice-sized living room with moquette, and eventually I rearranged the easels and painterly things in the atelier to a corner and put a tarp over them to try to ease Netto's artist block. We made it the rabbit's room, adorning it with straw and plants and everything I felt might amuse our little friend. Not that I could blame him for everything he's been through. Perhaps I'd even gotten off easier despite the almost constant physical pain I'd experienced for those days in the boys' care. Sometimes pain is measured in complexity, not in quantity. We did not speak much on the train ride from New York to Philadelphia. Netto was in good spirits then and assured me that we would talk about everything when we'd had a little time to recover. But every time I broached the subject after we settled in, he kept putting it off. After so many,
"Some other time, please,"
I gave up on it and assumed the pace immortal. The one thing I learned on the train ride is the rabbit's ability to disappear from the sight of all but small children, it would seem. As much as that particularity led to some embarrassment, I had been in the habit of bringing her on my shoulder when I went grocery shopping. She gave my earlobe indicatory bites about what legume to buy, even once or twice pointing me towards some herbs and spices, which I realized after the fact she couldn't have intended to eat herself. It wasn't of importance, as they were useful in soups and stews. The rabbit's familiarity with me was charming, and it certainly felt closer to the deportment of a cat or a dog than any hare I'd ever met, but I suppose that's magic for you. Perhaps if we weren't immortal, I might have been concerned with Netto's timetable of recovery. I wasn't the kind that would push past others' boundaries, and he spent most of the days in his room while I was awake, and then at night, if I went to bed late enough, I'd hear him leave by the back entrance, by the kitchen, to wherever he went. If I didn't know him better, I would swear he was suddenly simply being true to his vampiric nature. But as we know, nature is never predictable. The crows left us somewhere after we boarded the train. It was difficult to ascertain, but my instinct was that it had been Leona who had joined us with her cacophony of corvids, and that she was eager to return to poor, beleaguered Balgus. A few weeks into settling in, Netto found the little phallic keychain at the bottom of his bag, and I had a good laugh explaining it to him. It was the first time I saw him smile and light up a bit. Otherwise, he was more melancholy than I had ever seen him, and that's saying something. My recovery was swift enough. The rabbit slept at the foot of my bed most nights and followed me closely where I went, which was endearing and not unwelcome. Without much awareness, and perhaps lacking Neto's company, I started to talk to it. Something about its intelligent gaze made that reasonable. Every day before bed, she would start up the stairs to check in with Neto, presumably. One time, I decided to follow stealthily by and heard him speak at low volume through a crack in his door.
Don't give me that look. I'm fine. I just need time.
I would have followed again, but something in my recovery mind abhorred intruding on others' secrets, even more than holding my own. Still, it was odd. What did those two talk about, I wonder? What was the rabbit to him? Was she the reason for his artist block? I asked him once if I could give her a name, and Neto looked nervous. He said he preferred not to, if that was all right. He just called her Bunny, which I found juvenile, but then again I had been calling her Rabbit, so anyway. I suppose I'd lived through lonelier times. Occasionally I would miss the boy, completely ignoring his betrayal, wondering about his welfare. But as mentioned, the rabbit was good company, and knowing that Neto was nearby, working through whatever he was working through, stopped me from thinking that we were stagnating and instead simply taking it slow. That's what you do when you have time. You no longer adhere to its tyranny, which can be a good thing, until you realize you may have supplanted it with something subtly nihilistic. Still, it felt nice, like being back on a ship, sailing across to unknown shores, simply observing the elements simmering a soup below decks, swaying, waiting to reunite with what dreams I last left on my pillowcase.